password or a OTP which comes on a real time to your phone, right? And then you have to enter that OTP, and then the customer is customer's credentials are checked whether he is a real customer, and then the payment is done. So these are the protections normally available for card payments which happen in an online environment, right? But you might have also observed that if you are paying on a foreign website, right? Many times they ask for just the card number and the expiry date. They don't ask for any secret password or OTP or anything of that nature. So if your card is lost, there are chances that it can be misused by a fraudster in an online environment. So what kind of protection is given by the bank in such a scenario where a card is transacted online on a foreign website, right? So the solutions nowadays available, as you can see, the first point, online transaction monitoring to detect abnormal uses on the card. So what happens is nowadays banks have installed fraud monitoring solutions, fraud management solutions. So the moment if a online transaction is observed on a foreign website, the the online transaction monitoring software immediately tries to check whether the transaction is genuine or it is a fraudulent in nature, right? And because this is basically this logic that is being used by this fraud monitoring solutions is artificial intelligence. They will check whether the customer has used the card in an online environment in the past. If not, it might be a fraudulent transaction. The bank might like to check with the customer by calling him and trying to find out whether he is really doing the transaction, etc. Okay, so the online transaction monitoring software really helps the bank in order to detect abnormal usage on the card and prevent a fraudulent transaction. But there are other solutions like if the uh, bank, if the customer feels that he has lost the card, he can always call the contact center or the call center of the bank where he can file a report or make a police complaint, right? So these are some of the other ways which protects the customer if his card gets lost, or the bank can also reimburse the money from an insurance company if your card is insured. These are the mechanisms which are being used by the banks in order to safeguard the customer's interests and help him out. So this is a typical case of a card getting lost, and what are the controls or countermeasures which are available in order to protect the customer's interests. Next comes application fraud or identity theft. Yeah. So this is also a kind of a fraud which happens in a card environment, payment environment. The fraudster will approach your card company and will produce your ID and try to get a duplicate card, which is called as application fraud. In India, we have identity certificates like Aadhaar card, PAN card, driving license. I think the same kind or similar kind of ID proofs are also required in Nepal. Just imagine a fraudster gets access to your ID card, right? And he puts his photograph on your ID card, and he goes to the bank and requests for a duplicate card, right? The bank might feel that he is a genuine customer and might well issue him a new card, right? This is called as application fraud, where the fraudster is using fabricated documents to obtain a credit card, and later he misuses the card on your behalf. Or second point is also the same: misuse of personal information, using stolen information to apply for a card. The third one is account takeover fraud. Now just imagine a fraudster calls up your card issuing bank and changes the addresses and contact numbers, right? If he manages to change the address and contact numbers, right, then what happens next? He can request for a duplicate card and the card gets dispatched to the fraudster's address, right? So if the fraudster gets access to your credit card or debit card, he can misuse your account and commit a crime. This is called as account takeover fraud, where the fraudster takes control of an existing credit card account by changing the address or contact numbers. So it's very easy. You just have to give a call to the contact center or the call center of the bank. They will ask you some secret question as to what is your mother's maiden name, what is your date of birth. The fraudster has already made a friendship with you on social media and he has already got all your confidential information. The fraudster replies all the queries in positive and manages to convince the call center executive that the genuine customer has called, and thus the addresses are changed, the contact numbers of the genuine customers are changed, and the new card is dispatched to the address of the fraudster. The genuine customer has no clue that somebody has already got access to a duplicate card, right? And then after getting the duplicate card, the fraudster can misuse this card by going to an online website and making a fraudulent payment transaction, right? So the controls or the countermeasures available here is strong KYC documentation. KYC means know your customer. That means the moment a person calls, his credentials or credibility needs to be checked, right? The bank should not issue a card to any fraudulent customer. The identity of the customer has to be thoroughly checked, right? Robust customer validation in non-face-to-face interactions with call center. In India, we have a system called as eKYC, electronic KYC, where the customer has to physically go to the branch and verify himself by his biometrics, and thereby he gets access to a new card. So eKYC is a very powerful mechanism through which these kind of frauds can be combated. Okay, next is never received card. Many times what happens is the cards are getting manufactured elsewhere. You have the bank. Yes, come again. Any doubts? Yeah, any doubts? Can I go ahead? Hello?
Yes, okay, you can go, sir.
Okay. Acha, you have muted all of them. They can hear me, but they cannot.
Oh,
I mean, their voices. You have muted them. Okay. Fine. I can later take some questions if there are there. Okay. So, never received card is a type of fraud where uh, the moment the card is manufactured by a vendor and it is normally sent to the branch or to the customer's address, right? The cards are normally sent to these two places from where the customer, if it is going to a branch, the customer has to go to a branch, uh, give his ID proof and all that, and gets possession of the card. And if it is dispatched to the address, he directly gets possession of the card. But what is happening here nowadays is that the fraudsters are making friendship with the postal and the courier staff, right? So whenever the card is in transit from the manufacturing company firm to the customer's address or the branch, the postal or the courier staff, he intercepts the card and hands over to the fraudster. So they have a tie-up. There's a commission, right? So the postal and boy and the fraudster, they have a tie-up. They collude with each other, and the moment the card is received by them, they also get access to the pin mailer. The ATM pin, it goes in a separate courier. So they get access to both of them. So the card is with the fraudster, the pin is also with the fraudster. So what stops the fraudster to go to an ATM, put the pin and withdraw money, right? The customer comes to know only if a message of the transaction goes to his mobile phone. Otherwise, the customer has no clue of this particular transaction. He does not have any access to his card. Somebody else makes a transaction on his behalf. So the protection available here is there should be a service level agreement, SLA, with the courier company. The bank and the courier company should have a agreement by which if the card is stolen, the courier company has to make good the loss. There has to be an agreement between the bank and the courier company, right? So these are some of the protection available for never received card kind of frauds. This we have already seen. I will give you the PPT later. You can have a look. Okay. So this is a kind of a fraudulent incident where the fraudster taps the wire. You might have seen that the POS machine in a merchant outlet, right? It is normally connected to a telephone wire, but nowadays you have those GPRS POS, internet-based POS machines as well. But this is a wired connection. Many of the POS machines are connected to a telephone wire. So the card data, the moment you swipe the card on the POS machine, the POS machine reads the card and the data is transferred. The data travels from the POS machine to the backend switch in the bank, right? So nowadays these fraudsters, they try to tap this wire, right, and try to steal the data which is flowing in the wire, right? So what data is flowing in the wire? It is a card number, the PIN number, amount, right? Expiry date and all that data is traveling. So if the fraudster gets access to this data, he can create a new card, right? But getting the data, he can always create a new card or a duplicate card, right? So these are the problems. So if we can create a duplicate card, he can do a transaction, a fraudulent transaction using a duplicate card. So this is a problem which is there in many countries in the South Asian markets. So the solutions or the protections available are encryption of the data passing through the telephone line, right? The moment the card data starts from the POS machine, it has to be encrypted by a key pair. Uh, you might have learned if you're IT student, public key infrastructure. So the card data gets locked by public and private key pair, and then this data is again decrypted at the bank's end. So even if somebody taps the wire, he will not be able to make out what data is flowing. So these are the protections which are available in order to combat wiretapping kind of frauds. Now I'll go to the next, counterfeit skimming. So what is counterfeit skimming? So let me show you a diagram. This is your ATM machine. Now see what is the fraudster doing? He is trying to fix an external device on the ATM slot. You can see that? Yeah, so this is called as a skimmer. This is available at many places, right? You can just put the skimmer on the ATM, right? The second diagram, you can see that nobody can, you will not be able to make out whether any external device has been connected. You can see that. So with your naked eye, you cannot make out if there is any external device which has been fitted on the ATM. So this is the kind of thing which is being done by the fraudsters. They try to attach a external device on the ATM. So what is the purpose of this external device? The purpose is the moment a customer swipes his card on this compromised ATM, the skimmer or this external device, it reads your card data. There is a magnetic strip behind the card which contains some data. So that data is captured by this skimmer or the external device. Okay. So, and later this device is detached from the ATM, and then this device is connected to a computer by the fraudster, and all the data in this device is downloaded onto a computer, and using this data, a duplicate card or a counterfeit card can be created. You can see that. So this is the problem. Now you will ask me, okay, the fraudster has access to your card, but can he do a fraudulent transaction on an ATM just by having a card? No. He also requires your ATM PIN, isn't it? So for ATM PIN, what he does, for getting the ATM PIN, what the fraudster does is something like this. He attaches a small camera. As you can see, this is a pamphlet holder. This is a pamphlet holder which is normally seen at the top of the ATM, where the banks have a lot of brochures, marketing brochures in that particular box, right? So the fraudster attaches a small camera, pinhole camera, which projects or which captures whatever is typed on the ATM keypad. The small pinhole camera is put in such a position that it directly captures whatever keystrokes the customer does on the ATM keypad. So the moment a customer types the pin on the ATM keypad, those pins are captured by this pinhole camera. So now the fraudster has access to your pins. The fraudster also has access to the ATM card data by which he can create or manufacture a duplicate card, right? So he has your card, he has your PIN. What stops him to go to an ATM and withdraw money on your behalf, right? You come to know of this fraud only when the bank sends you a message, transaction message, alert, SMS alert, saying that uh, a card transaction has happened on your account. Otherwise, the customer has no clue that a fraudulent transaction has happened on his card, and this crime has been done by a fraudster, right? So what are the protections available here? So what is counterfeit and skimming? Counterfeit and skimming is nothing but uh, copying the information on the card stripe, magnetic stripe, fraudulently using a card reader, which I have already explained, and then using the information to make counterfeit cards. Okay. Now, how to get the pin? The fraudster can either do a shoulder surfing. He'll stand behind you and he will try to peep from behind and check what pin you're entering. That could be one way of how you can get access to the pin. Or there are other mechanisms as well. Card skimmers to capture card data, fake pin pads to capture pins, right? Or all this data, once it is accessed by the fraudster, he can create a duplicate card and commit and do a fraudulent transaction by entering your PIN and all that. So the problem here is difficulty in identifying the point of compromise. The solutions or the controls, countermeasures available here is PCI DSS compliance. This is a standard for card payment security. It's called as PCI DSS, Payment Card Industry Data Security Standard. So so this is a security standard as far as card transactions are concerned. So if a bank has complied with PCI DSS, then they get some kind of protection against counterfeit and skimming kind of frauds. Customer also should be made aware uh, today. Involvement with financial institutions, card associations, networks, and law enforcement agencies, right? So you need to have a connect with all this external people so that this sort of frauds through counterfeit and skimming is reduced. Okay. Now let's move. We have already seen this. We have already seen this. Uh, we will quickly go through. I mean, this skimming. What are the countermeasures? As you can see here, what are the mitigation measures? We have anti-skimming devices, right? Nowadays, banks have implemented anti-skimming devices. So the moment your card is inserted on a skimming device, right? So what happens is, for a moment, what happens is the entire system is jammed. So this is the new technique which is implemented by the banks. The moment you sense that the card is entering a skimming device, the entire system is jammed, right? And then, but then the transaction goes through. The customer gets access to his money, but then the fraudster is not able to read your card data by using a skimming device, right, or a skimmer. So this is a new technology which has been implemented by many banks. So this is called a jamming mechanism, wherein the card data cannot get extracted by the skimming device. So this is the new kind of technology which is made available, and many banks have implemented this anti-skimming mechanism or device in their ATMs. Okay. Uh, Now next, let's come to cyber attacks. Okay. Uh, this is an example of a cyber attack. This is called as ATM terminal malware attack, resulting in financial loss. So, what do you mean by that? Malware. I hope you all understand what is a malware. It's a malicious code, right? So nowadays, these malicious codes are also, or the malware, are also getting the ATMs are also getting infected by these malwares or malicious codes. Many ATM endpoints, the ATM terminals where you do the transactions, they are getting attacked by malwares, and many banks have lost money in the process. So as you can see from this, there are two people who enters an ATM at around midnight, around 4 o'clock in the morning.